Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This week is Thanksgiving in the United States, and I thought it would be a perfect time to talk about gratitude in light of our grieving process. More specifically, how could we be thinking about gratitude in the midst of our grief, and are these two ideas even compatible? Or is gratitude just something that maybe will come along later in the grieving process? Personally, I always thought of gratitude as something that evolved from a place of joy, from a place of happiness, that it was a byproduct of things going well in your life. And it's only been recently that I've discovered the value of gratitude, not only in all circumstances of life, but especially in the midst of pain and suffering. And I wanted to share a little bit about that with you now. So part of what helped me realize that gratitude is for now rather than later is that it helps us cope with painful emotions. There's been a lot of research that's been done in the last decade or more about gratitude. And when I looked into some of it, I was really astounded to find that some of the benefits of people who practice some sort of gratitude on a regular basis have stronger immune systems. They get better sleep, they have fewer aches and pains, they tend to be more joyful and optimistic and have more energy. This was a big one for 2020. They tend to feel less lonely and isolated and have more compassion for themselves and others. They tend to be more generous, more forgiving. They experience a greater resistance to stress, and that the actual gratitude practice that they have ends up being a protection from the effects of trauma and long-term anxiety, which I found incredibly compelling. I don't know about you, but not only has this year kind of felt like a trauma in and of itself, but anytime I've lost a pet, it feels very traumatic. It feels like the rug has been pulled out from under me. My life is no longer the same. I'm dealing with so much stress and anxiety, both leading up to my pet's passing, the actual passing, and afterwards. Even if your pet hasn't died, but if your pet's gone missing, or if you've lost your pet during divorce or something, there's just so many emotions and so much upheaval that happens to our regular life. And so to know that practicing gratitude on a regular basis can help mitigate some of the negative effects of that, I found extremely interesting. And then finally, the thing that I really was excited about is that gratitude can actually help block out a lot of toxic, negative emotions that we experience, especially during grief. So things like resentment or regret, which a lot of us deal with when we're grieving, it's actually incompatible. And if you think about it, this makes sense. It's incompatible to experience those feelings and be truly feeling grateful at the same time. So in a way, getting into that space of feeling grateful, it gives us a reprieve from some of those negative emotions. It helps us rewire our brains in a way that is more positive thinking. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that all emotions are valid and we should give ourselves space to feel them. So I'm not saying that we should never be allowed to feel toxic feelings. But I think for those of us that are going through grief, after a while it just becomes so burdensome and overwhelming, and we feel like there's never going to be a light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. So to hear that by adopting more gratitude into our regular lives, it can actually give us that emotional reprieve. It can give us that breath of fresh air. I found to be really encouraging, and hopefully you will too. The other thing that I really like about bringing more gratitude into our daily lives, even when we're in pain, even when we're suffering, is that it actually gives us agency. It gives us power and it gives us choice in a time that often feels very powerless and very helpless. When we're grieving, we're vulnerable. And it very often for me felt like there were so many things I couldn't control. I came face to face with some very harsh realities about my ability to control my life and the life of those that I cared about. And while we don't have control, we do have choices. And I really feel like gratitude and practicing it is exercising that choice. It's a way of taking back some of that power during a time that can feel extremely powerless. Gratitude practice is also a wonderful way to practice self-care. And as you know, I'm big on finding ways to take care of yourself when you're having a hard time. And so knowing that being more grateful, feeling those feelings of gratitude can actually do things not only for us emotionally and psychologically, but it can actually do things for us physiologically too, is just a wonderful gift that we can give ourselves on a regular basis. So if you're open to this idea of maybe incorporating a little more gratitude in your life this week, one of the things that I would encourage you to think about is to focus on things that actually bring up authentic feelings of gratitude for you. I don't know about you, but when I've thought about gratitude in the past, I tend to think about things that I should be grateful for. And of course, these are different for all of us, and I recognize with 2020 being the year that it has been, a lot of the things that we sort of took for granted as baseline gratitude list items may be back at the top of our list now. But, things like, I'm, grateful that I'm born in a free country, or that I have my health, or a family that loves me, or what have you. These might be things that you truly are grateful for. I know I am. But if they don't create that internal sense of awe, of peace, of just feeling grateful, I would encourage you to move on to thinking about something else. For me, initially, I couldn't get those things out of my head, and so I actually made 2 lists. I'm a list person. So I actually made a list of things that I felt like I should be grateful for, so that I could just kind of put them to the side and say, yes, these are sort of the general things that are great about my life, that if someone else looked at my life, they would say, oh, you're so lucky, X, Y, and Z. And I do feel grateful for those things. But what I really wanted to focus on were the things that in that moment would really feel truly authentic and inspiring. And I found that most often those things were very specific, very concrete, very small things. It was things like, I'm so grateful that I have this particular picture on my phone of my pet. Or, in my case, toward the end of Chubby's life, he was too weak to really go for walks, and my mom had gifted us with a dog stroller. And so I would walk around the neighborhood with him in the dog stroller, and I was so grateful for that dog stroller because it gave us some really precious memories together. And so I don't know what this is for you. Maybe it's a specific memory or an event. Maybe you're just feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude of the time that you did have, or the routines, or the things that you like to do together. Whatever they are, the stuff that makes you smile the way I'm smiling now, the stuff that brings a little lightness to your heart, those I would say are the things to dwell on. Those are, if you're making a list, would be the things that I would put on your gratitude list, because that's really what's going to create that positive benefit for you. At the end of the day, I would say, one authentic little concrete thing is far better than 15 broad general things that you feel like you should be grateful for. I would encourage you to dedicate your gratitude practice to your pet. And as cheesy as that might sound, there's a couple of reasons for this. We know that for gratitude to really have the positive effects that I mentioned earlier, it needs to be something we do on a regular basis. It's just like exercising, building a muscle, rewiring our brain. These things happen with repetition and with regularity. And there's been so much information now on habit formation and making habits stick, and you've probably been aware of some of this as well. The 2 things that I really pull from a lot of that research is, one, for something to stick, if you're trying to create a new habit, root it in something meaningful. That's really what is going to create the longest lasting change, is if you can connect it to something deeper and personally meaningful to you. And of course, by dedicating this practice to our pets, we're strengthening that connection, we're reestablishing that relationship. Just because our pets aren't physically with us anymore doesn't mean that the relationship goes away, right? We get to keep the relationship. And by thinking about the things that we're grateful for now and the things that we're grateful for during the time we had with them is affirming that relationship and affirming that connection. And I really love that. It's a way of extending our relationship beyond the physical realm, which can be super powerful, right? And then the other thing about habit formation that I find really compelling is that to have something stick, it really helps to have it piggybacked on an existing habit. And so if there's a time in your day that you've got 30 seconds or 3 minutes that your brain is kind of available to reflect on life, I would take advantage of that time and say, that's going to be the time that I'm going to think about something I'm grateful for. So, maybe it's making coffee or brushing your teeth or doing laundry. Just finding a time that is going to be consistent in your life that you can spend reflecting on something like this is a great way to establish it in your daily routine. So my hope for you this week is that you would find one thing each day that you can truly feel genuine gratitude over, whether that is something in your present, something in your past with your pet, that you can dedicate that time to reaffirming that relationship that you've had with your pet and experience some of the benefits that we talked about earlier in this video. I hope it gives you a new way of thinking about gratitude and its relationship to grief. Next week, I'm going to be doing a video on establishing a regular grieving time and the benefits of that. And that was something that I found hugely helpful when I had lost Chubby and when I've lost other pets since. And so if you aren't subscribed to the show already, I would encourage you to do so. I wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Please take extra good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.